Okay, so just in general, we're talking about arteries. They're carrying blood away from the heart, and they're usually red. And then veins are carrying blood back to the heart, and they're usually blue, except there'll be one exception we learn about with the heart here. So arteries are usually carrying oxygenated blood, and then veins are usually carrying deoxygenated blood. So just to start with the heart, so this point down here at the bottom is called the apex of the heart. And then if I take off the vessels, just the entire top of the heart here is called the base. So then the heart has four main chambers. The two that are on the top are called the atrium, and then the two that are on the bottom are called the ventricles. So these little flaps right here laying over the atria are called auricles. So this would be the right auricle, and then this would be the left auricle. So directly below that are the right and left atrium. So if I open this up, this chamber up here on the top right is the right atrium, and then the chamber on the top left is the left atrium. So then if we go below, the chamber on the bottom right is the right ventricle, so this area here, and then the bottom left is the left ventricle. And then if we were to put this back on here as well, we could say that this here is the right ventricle, and then this here is the left ventricle. And the apex of the heart is located on the left ventricle. So a way to tell that you're looking at the front of the heart is if you hold it up, the apex of the heart should be facing towards the left here. So then there's sulcus on the heart, just like we talked about with the brain. So it's more of an indentation where blood vessels fit down in there. So the first one, we have the anterior interventricular sulcus. So it's represented by this yellow line here. Anterior, because it's on the front of the heart, and then it's in between the two ventricles. And then you can see how the blood vessels would sit down in there. And then on the back of the heart, we turn it around. We have the posterior interventricular sulcus, which is located on the back of the heart and between the two ventricles still. And then what we have what is called the coronary sulcus, which is represented by this yellow line right here. And this is your coronary sinus, and that coronary sinus sits down in the coronary sulcus. So those are the three sulcus you have to know. And then the next thing would be the ligamentum arteriosum, which is just this white little ligament right here, and it's connecting the aorta with the pulmonary trunk. So that's your ligamentum arteriosum. And then now we'll move on to the vessels of the heart. So the first one we have is the superior vena cava. So that's the top one here. And then the bottom one here, this opening, is called your inferior vena cava. So both of those are draining into the right atrium. If I can get this off. So you can see both the superior and inferior are coming into the right atrium here. And then that coronary sinus along the back side is also draining deoxygenated blood into the right atrium. So those are all bringing deoxygenated blood back to the right atrium. So then once blood flow goes to the right ventricle, it now has to go to the lungs. So it's going to the lungs via the pulmonary trunk here. The pulmonary trunk, if we look at the back side now, turns into the pulmonary arteries. So there's one on this side, and then there's also one on this side. So those are what's taking the deoxygenated blood to the lungs. So normally arteries are red and they are carrying oxygenated blood, but in this instance, this is the only exception, this artery is now carrying deoxygenated blood to the lungs, which is why it's blue here. So then once it goes to the lungs, it comes back to the heart via the pulmonary veins. So there's two on each side, so there's two here and then two here. So this is another one of the only exceptions of the veins, usually carrying deoxygenated blood and blue, but this time they are carrying oxygenated blood back to the heart, so they are red here. So that's the only exception for the veins. So then those four pulmonary veins are bringing blood back to that left atrium here. So then once blood flow goes to the left ventricle, it now has to be pumped to the rest of the body via the aorta here. So we have the ascending aorta going up in the front, and we have the aortic arch, and then we have the descending aorta, which would continue back behind the heart. So those are the great vessels of the heart. And then if we go towards the inside of the heart now, so if I put this here and then I take it off, this right here is still the inside of your atria. So the muscular ridges on the inside of your atria are called your pectinate muscles. So those are located right here. And then the muscular ridges inside of the ventricles down here are called your trabeculae carneae. So you can also see those located through here as well. The pectinate muscles would also be along the atrium and here, but you cannot see those as well on this model. So if we tagged them, we would do it where we showed you right here. So those are pectinate muscles. These are trabeculae carneae. So now the wall that separates the right atrium from the left atrium here, which would be this area right here, that's called your interatrial septum. So on both sides here. So located on that interatrial septum is what is called your foramen ovale. So that's going to be that little round indention right in there. So that should be closed by birth, and if not, then it would be a hole in your heart, and then you would be mixing the deoxygenated blood in the right atrium with the oxygenated blood in the left atrium. So they'll go in and fix that. And then the wall that's separating the two ventricles down here would be this, and that's called your interventricular septum. So interatrial septum up here, and then interventricular septum down here. So then the next muscles we have are what's called your papillary muscles. So there's 3 on the right and 2 on the left. So there would be 1, 2, 3 papillary muscles here, and then 1, 2 papillary muscles on the left. So then these little white strings hanging down off the valve are called your chordae tendineae. So those chordae tendineae go and connect to the papillary muscles, and then when this papillary muscle contracts, it pulls these little cords down and it opens your valve up. So now towards the valves. So the valves that are located in between the atrium and the ventricles are called your atrioventricular valves, and there's 2 of them. The right one is called the tricuspid valve, and then the left one is called the bicuspid valve, also known as the mitral valve. You can either one, but something to help you remember is tri before you bi. So the tricuspid also is named tricuspid because there's 3 papillary muscles, and then the left is bicuspid because there's 2 papillary muscles here. So tricuspid valve, bicuspid valve. And then the next 2 valves we have are called your semilunar valve. So normally this would set up here. So the semilunar valves are controlling flow from your right ventricle to your lungs, or from your left ventricle through the aorta to the rest of your body. So the one here is called your pulmonary semilunar valve because it's located in the pulmonary trunk coming from the right ventricle. And then the red one is called your aortic semilunar valve because it's controlling blood flow from the left ventricle up through the aorta to the rest of the body there. So those would be located in the pulmonary trunk and then the aorta here as well. So then if we go through full blood flow with all of the valves, we have blood coming in from the superior vena cava, the inferior vena cava, and then that coronary sinus to the right atrium, going through the tricuspid valve to the right ventricle, and then going through the pulmonary semilunar valve up through the pulmonary trunk, through the pulmonary arteries here to the lungs. It's coming back from the lungs through the 4 pulmonary veins here, which are draining into the left atrium, going through the bicuspid or mitral valve to the left ventricle, and then from the left ventricle up through the aortic semilunar valve, through the aorta, and then to the rest of the body.